Lasarte, September 17, 1904 to August 22, 1936, was a Spanish writer and political activist. As a writer, he is regarded as one of the first, if not the only, truly surrealist poets in Spain, and he is also a part of Generation 27. Following an alleged visit to the Soviet Union, he switched away from Stalinism and toward Carlism, the Catholic Church in Spain, and the Agrarian Party, much to the surprise and consternation of his surrealist colleagues. These sentiments made him skeptical of the Second Spanish Republic when it was established in 1931, and he eventually fell victim to the Republican faction's Red Terror during the subsequent Spanish Civil War. After a half-century obscurity, his memory and the circumstances of his kidnapping and murder have emerged as a counter-reference in politically sensitive talks about the comparable murder of fellow poet Federico Garcia Lorca during the White Terror. Let's try the final results in this video. Watch his entire life history video till the end so that you can understand everything step by step and bring out the eyes of a rare hero. Family and youth. According to family history, José María's forefathers descended from Moctezuma. Historical documents show that the Carvajals established Campillos in Malaga province in the 16th century. The Hinojosas, another local family with an exclusively male paternal line, maintained their dominance in the county for centuries as wealthy landowners. José María Hinojosa Carvajal's father, Salvador Hinojosa Carvajal, 1869–1936, and uncle held alcaldía positions in Campillos during the late Restoration period. Salvador was also a diputado provincial and had a strong influence in the local conservative community. In 1893, he married Asunción Lasarte Suárez, 1872–1932, a descendant of another wealthy landowner family from nearby Estepa. The couple raised their 6 children on family properties in Campillos and Alameda, with José María being the second oldest. Hinojosa and his siblings were raised in luxury and under strong religious influences, the latter primarily attributable to their mother. Certain researchers argue that Asunción's strong Catholic beliefs bordered on despotism. José María has been regarded as serious, reserved, devoted to reading, and prone to excess since infancy. In 1915, he enrolled at the Colegio de San Fernando in Malaga, as well as the Jesuit College of San Estanislao, from which he graduated in 1920. He studied preparatory law at the Universidad de Granada from 1921 to 1922 before relocating to Madrid in 1923 to enroll at the Facultad de Derecho. Hinojosa returned to Spain in 1926 after studying in Paris from 1925 to 1926, perhaps to better his French or to prepare for diplomatic service. He spent the majority of 1927 serving in the military as a soldier in the capital. He finished his service in 1928. The years 1928 to 1930 were primarily bohemian in Malaga, with trips throughout Andalusia and beyond. Aside from excursions to France and England, Hinojosa visited Nordic countries and toured the USSR, maybe the first of its kind allowed by Soviet officials. While living with his family, he began to participate in the family company, which included industrial exploratory efforts in addition to landholdings. Around that time, he fell in love with Ana Friller-Valls, an aristocrat, granddaughter of Juan Valera, and a local aviation pioneer. Their connection was convoluted and irregular. Hinojosa hoped for marriage, and Friller later stated that they were on the verge of marrying, yet, she also maintained that they were only close friends. The affair continued till Hinojosa died. He was never married and had no children. Literary career. Hinojosa began his literary career in Malaga in the early 1920s, under the mentorship of Emilio Prados. In 1923, he co-founded Ambos, a literary journal. The journal, rooted in Andalusian rural mythology, incorporated elements of the avant-garde, such as Dadaism, Futurism, and Expressionism. In addition to the creator's own poems, it also featured pieces by Garcia Lorca, Lafon Zambrano, and Salazar Chapla. Ambos ceased publication after only 4 issues, with circulation primarily limited to acquaintances. Hinojosa's writing flourished in Paris, where he encountered Prados and Lorca, as well as Buñuel and other young Spanish artists. Dalí influenced several well-known writers and artists. Though styled after Rimbaud, Hinojosa was classified as a surrealist in poetry. The poems he submitted to reviews such as La Verdad or Verso y Prosa, but especially the volumes he produced between 1925 and 1927, are regarded as a stepping stone toward complete literary maturity. Hinojosa's writings reached a climax in 1928, with the release of 2 additional volumes, which were regarded as the pinnacle of his surrealism. In the late 1920s, he became connected with Imprenta Sur, a friendly Malaga publishing business, and, more specifically, with the founding of Literal, another Malaga-based avant-garde literary publication. He worked as an editor and poet, particularly in the 1929 commemoration issue dedicated to Góngora. At the time, he also engaged financially and joined the board. Hinojosa later planned to start a completely surrealist publication. He was already known as an extravagant iconoclast in the local Malaga milieu, owing to his poetry and bohemian lifestyle, as well as the relatively anti-religious, if not quite blasphemous, reasons of his writings. Hinojosa used social provocations to offend both intellectuals like Valle-Inclán and rural Andalusians. He received support from Dalí and his new partner Gala. Hinojosa's relationship with his avant-garde circle of friends remained uncertain. Despite being part of their inner circle, he was sometimes mocked as a wealthy señorito. Diego, Lorca, Dalí, and Buñuel criticized him as a weak author who produced awful poetry and was not a genuine part of the group. Hinojosa was treated as a sponsor rather than a fellow writer, and many stayed at his premises, traveled with him, and dined at his expense, considering it useful to be on close terms with a bohemian with the current account. Some repaid with their own works, and this is how Hinojosa gathered a collection of paintings by Miro, Picasso, Gris, Dalí, and Bors. Literary critics either ignored or mocked him. It is unclear whether the intricate setting contributed to the violent and apocalyptic tone of Hinojosa's last lyrical collection, which will be released in 1930. Pulled from publication and reissued in early 1931. It turned out to be his farewell to belles lettres. According to others, the poet decided to commit literary suicide and never look back. Works. Hinojosa wrote approximately 200 poems, the majority of which were brief and extremely short. Short prose is reduced to 14 works that defy traditional categorization, while dramatic and literary attempts have not survived to this day. All of his works were composed between 1923 and 1930, and were published during his lifetime in 6 limited circulation volumes and a few journals. His creative output is considered a curve, ranging from early infantile pieces to a surrealist apex and a final fall. Another scholar identifies 4 phases: descriptive, transitory, autobiographical, and catastrophic. Early poems, From Ambos to Poma del Campo, 1925, are based on rural stories and set in an unnamed area that is generally pastoral and lyrical. Some refer to neopopulism as a style influenced by folk music, while others include purismo and cubismo. Scholars highlight a blend of tradition and modernity, with the latter represented by an inventive, if not already exaggerated metaphor. Poesia de Perfil, 1926, published in Paris, had poems that explored the intersection between fantasy and reality. The predominantly descriptive tone gave way to dominant lyrical expression, and the monothematic perspective was replaced by a range of themes, frequently structured around the concept of exploration. The term aesthetica purista was partially replaced with the oniric and surrealist approach, which was not immediately apparent, and the entire volume was noticeably more expressive. La Rosa de los Vientos, 1927, republished in Malaga, was a tiny book of only 19 poems that centered on imaginative excursions to exotic destinations and the inner self. The collection discussed space, mystery, and wilderness, making many references to ancient and popular culture, as well as introducing heterodox erotic reasons. It is defined as a mix of Hispanic ultra, French surrealism, and Chilean creationism, with some very subtle stylistic elements like as varying rhyme orders and syllable kinds. Hinojosa's 2 volumes from 1928 are considered to be his most mature works. The predominant theme of Aurelius de la Luz was sensuality, which appeared in the majority of the poetry. They were largely surrealist in nature, with distinctive themes such as mutilations and fragmented body parts. The fact that this poetry kept classic metrum is supposed to demonstrate Hinojosa's synthesis aims. La Flor de California, considered the earliest surrealist work in Spain, is his solitary prosaic volume. It combines 7 dream narratives and 7 oniric poems. The former preserve some weird linear coherence, while the latter approach automatic writing. The writing explores classic surrealist images, including anti-religious reasons, black humor, objective chance, and subterranean dream worlds, which include a succession of apocalyptic visions. In terms of perspective, it is strictly autobiographical, as it expresses his own character in an increasingly desperate search for fulfillment. La Sangre en Libertad, 1931, was essentially a reworking of La Flor, but with increased anti-religious satire, sexual undertones, violent motivations, and apocalyptic setting. Autobiographical elements were entwined with catastrophic premonitions. Stylistically, the volume demonstrates a development toward free poetry and far-reaching formal linguistic explorations. From Stalin to Carlist. Until the early 1930s, Hinojosa did not engage in politics, though his literary stand, particularly anti-religious threads, but also social provocations aimed at perceived bourgeoisie mentality, clearly indicated left-wing preferences. He reportedly considered collectivization of family estates and may have visited the USSR to become acquainted with the Soviet scheme. His subsequent about-face and involvement in right-wing politics remain a mystery and have not been fully explained. Some experts believe that the USSR's voyage started the transformation. Others argue that his change was aided by his involvement in the family business, which had been beset by rural strikes and social tensions for decades. It is suggested that a love affair with Anna Froehler, who was not only an aviation pioneer but also a typical affluent girl who despised his poetry, may have contributed to this shift in political orientation. It is unclear whether Hinojosa's artistic companion's ambiguous stance persuaded him that he belonged in another universe, causing him to react. Some experts believe his surrealism was simply a bourgeoisie señorito's caprice. Hinojosa's biographers either claim that he began to embrace a right-wing ideology after 1928 or that the break occurred between 1925 and 1930. When the Republic was declared in 1931, he was already dubious, but not militantly opposed. In unexplained circumstances, he accepted the position of juez municipal in Campillos, which may have exposed him to cases of social violence. In July, he founded a provincial landholders organization. Later that year, he became secretary of the Federación Provincial de Sindicatos Agrícolas de Málaga and began writing articles about agriculture and conservatism in the local La Unión Mercantil newspaper. Hinojosa expressed interest in José Albanana's Partido Nacionalista Español, causing concern among his erstwhile surrealist colleagues that he was establishing a provincial chapter of Partido Fascista. Hinojosa ultimately decided to support another right-wing movement. José María Lamami de Clarac, a landowner and friend of his father, was at the time mixing syndicate work in agrarian groups with political commitment in Carlism. He urged Hinojosa to follow suit. Since January 1932, he has participated in Communion Tradicionalista events. In July 1932, he was videotaped delivering a speech extolling the Catholic virtues of patriotic women who heroically faced renegade liberalism, and in early August, he arranged Carlist meetings in Malaga. He resigned from his position in Juez municipality. Gaining recognition in the national traditionalist press, Hinojosa was identified by the authorities as a belligerent Durikista. Despite having nothing to do with Sandrajada, he was detained and spent 2 weeks in a local prison, locked up with other Andalusian Carlists who were genuinely involved in the coup. The incident has only increased his radicalism. Between Carlism and agrarism. After being released from jail in late 1932, Hinojosa continued to organize Carlist assemblies throughout the province. In early 1933, he emerged as one of the most active traditionalists in the area, alongside Aras de Robles. In March, he rose to the position of chief of the local organization. In countless speeches, he hailed Carlist heroes and swore to liberate Spain from a liberal Marxist revolution. They paid tribute to Sanjurjo, who bravely sacrificed himself for Spain. Some speeches had thinly veiled anti-republican overtones. Hinojosa worked tirelessly to establish agrarian syndicates through meetings, speeches, and articles, while as a Carlist congressman, he led the Malaga section of Acción Popular. During the 1933 electoral campaign, he represented all three groups while running on a broad right-wing coalition platform. Some papers referred to him as a Carlist, some as an agrarian, and still others as an AP candidate. Academics identify him as a Carlist. With 21,662 votes, he failed to advance to the Cortes during the indecisive first round and withdrew just before the second. He began the year 1934 as a newly appointed member of the Board of Editorial Tradicionalista, a new publishing business designed as a vehicle for Carlist propaganda. Hinojosa's Carlist engagements are no longer documented after early 1934. Most sources indicate to his relationship with the Partido Agrario Español and its syndicates. He continued to write to La Unión Mercantil 3 times per month, co-administered family estates, and began his legal profession. Some accounts suggest he defended Campillos peasants charged with assault and robbery, but the newspapers said that he called the Guardia Civil against those who invaded his property, resulting in a deadly conflict. Hinojosa was appointed Delegado del Gobierno en los Servicios Hidráulicos del Sur de España by agrarian minister José María Cid in late 1934. He resigned in April 1935 due to shifting political circumstances and the agrarians' withdrawal from government. He was already the provincial president of Partido Agrario at the time, and he ran as its candidate in the 1936 elections, but was unsuccessful. Following the success of the Frente Popular, Hinojosa became heavily involved in agrarian syndicates, demanding the restoration of public order and a reform of rural labor contracts. He was jailed in May while still practicing law in Campillos due to disruptions. During the July 18 coup in Malaga, he may have assisted the military and, along with his father and brother, went into hiding the next day. They considered escaping to Gibraltar, but the three were apprehended on July 24. They spent the next month in provincial prison. On August 22, the workers' militia assaulted the building, took 43 detainees out, shot them in the local cemetery, and buried the dead in a mass grave. Hinojosa's remains have never been positively identified. After the nationalist capture of Malaga, the remnants were unearthed and Salvador Hinojosa was identified by a handkerchief in his pocket. It was assumed that 2 decayed young male bodies close to his body were those of Francisco and José María. Reception and legacy. Hinojosa's writings went unappreciated, except for a small avant-garde readership. Critics were mainly indifferent, with only a handful mentioning excessive originality. Following the 1928 volumes, some reviews termed the author's poetry entelequia, while others derided Señorito Andaluz, and stated that having 2 cars does not allow too much. Following his death, his works were almost completely forgotten. To both sides of the war, he was an inconvenient dead. For the Republicans, his life and death formed a dangerously symmetrical parallelism with Lorca's, potentially jeopardizing the propaganda exploitation of Lorca's fate as an anti-Francoist cause célèbre. Hinojosa was denied surrealist credentials and patronized. His erstwhile companions, such as Alberti, floated rumors about a greedy bourgeoisie landowner assassinated by his own peasants. Some denied knowing him. For the nationalists, who continuously rejected the existence of Spanish surrealism, his iconoclastic poetry disqualified him from being a nationalist martyr. Both exiled and Spanish literary historians either ignored Hinojosa or reduced him to footnotes, but some of his poetry appeared in anthologies and his name was mentioned in the press a few occasions. In 1974, Baltasar Peña, Hinojosa's cousin, used his position in the Diputación de Malaga to sponsor a reedition of selected works. While some press reports noted a deformation of modern literature, others emphasized its importance. Julio Nera initiated an effort to revindicate Hinojosa in 1977, culminating in a 1981 PhD dissertation. A 1983 reedition of 2 volumes of Literal also aided the cause. Hinojosa's work appeared in encyclopedias, magazines, textbooks, and other publications beginning in the 1980s, and another PhD thesis was published in 1995. Since then, his participation in literary history has been considered necessary, owing to his putative status as the first Spanish surrealist, yet, in some circumstances, he has been refused membership in Generation del 27. In 1998, Malaga province named him Hijo Predilecto. The 2004 birth centenary prompted multiple publications and events, and a 2012 research, rather than the conventional, forgotten poet, referred to him as a well-known Spanish poet. In 2014, a literary work was dedicated to him. A school in Malaga has been named after him. Hinojosa's memory remains politically controversial. Some address the Hinojosa-Lorca parallelism by claiming that both poets were victims in different ways of the irrational hatred of an absurd war, despite the fact that practically all publications covering the terrors of the Spanish civil conflict mention Lorca and almost none mention Hinojosa. Both right-wing and left-wing factions began claiming Hinojosa's legacy. Some traditionalist websites refer to him as their man, whilst certain progressive authors portray Hinojosa as a martyr who dedicated his life to combating imperialism, nationalism, and the church. Others suggest his homosexuality. In 2014, a monument mausoleum was dedicated to those who gave their life in defense of freedom and democracy and whose remains rest here or in other sites, at the Malaga San Rafael Cemetery, where Hinojosa was executed. Hinojosa has never been addressed in a series of press notes related, some of which indicated a construction recording La Barbarie de la Represión Franquista. Thank you for taking the time to engage with our content. We're delighted you enjoyed this article and would love to hear your feedback. Your feedback is really valuable to us, so please share it in the comments box below. If you're new and want to remain up to date on our latest material, subscribe to the Up First Time channel. By subscribing, you will be the first to learn about our new stories and videos, ensuring that you never miss out on any of the excitement. But we're more than just distributing material, we're also about creating a community. That is why we value your feedback so highly. If you have any recommendations or themes you'd like us to look into more, please leave them in the comments. We're always looking for new ideas and eager to hear from our viewers. And, speaking of ideas, if you're as enthusiastic about this subject or person as we are, have you considered doing a whole documentary? Your unique thoughts and viewpoints could be extremely beneficial to others, and presenting them in a documentary style could help you reach an even larger audience. This is something to think about. Finally, remember to click the like button and share this video with your friends and family. Let's work together to expand our community and welcome new members to the Up First Time family. Your support is invaluable to us, and we could not do it without you. Thank you again for your support, and we look forward to continuing this great journey with you.